David, a quick few thoughts and questions for the next few minutes. First of all, really one of the running themes of tonight's talk was that we are always in control of our state of mind. We may not be able to control our circumstances, but our reactions and attitudes we can. And it's fascinating to note, there's Jacob de Boinard, he's a writer, he wrote a book. He researched 700 dictionaries, and he comes up with the conclusion that you can tell more about a culture by its dictionary than by its guidebook. And there's something unique that while Jewish people perhaps have this stereotype of being miserable, as you said, the ach or the oi, in fact, Judaism has many, many words to describe different shades of joy. There is, right, sason, simcha, gila, rina, ditza, chedva. There's something like 10, 11, or 12 words that I know of that reflect different shades of joy.
Like gila, the Eskimos, the snow, right?
Sorry, exactly.
Like the Eskimos, the snow. Sure,
which I think embodies this idea that for Jewish people, joy and happiness is essential. It's fundamental. We learned that from, Moshe's words, that because you didn't serve with joy, you will be sent into exile. From the harshness and the severity of its absence, we learn of its importance and centrality. But here's the thing. The Hebrew word sameach or simcha etymologically comes from two words, sham, moach, which means the location of your thoughts. Pretty much what you shared tonight, that you are where your thoughts are. And if you could control the temperament, the color, the fabric, the texture, and the configuration of your thoughts, the happiness or that state of mind will flow and ensue. So I just wanted to highlight that beautiful, your idea is so beautifully encapsulated in the word simcha itself. I want to ask you, first of all, something that really quickly comes to mind through your presentation is what you just shared tonight could be its own little segment or perhaps a book or some type of video series, and visualizing these meditations, bringing them to life for people who do believe, who have faith, but concretizing them in the way you did so beautifully. Have you ever considered doing a project along those lines?
I kind of feel like that'll come a little later. Right now, it's such a privilege to be able to get into the rooms with the studio chiefs to pitch a project. And even though I might do that for years at a time and not get a project made, one project changes everything. It's been about 6 years since we've had anything in the theaters. Smurfs 2 was our last produced project. But we're still getting into the big rooms, and we've gotten hired. So we've made, thank God, a good living. Since Smurfs 2, we've done, 4 or 5 scripts for both TV and film. And each one of those, it's like buying a lottery ticket. A, it pays the bills and, quite well in between. You have the peaks and valleys. But B, it keeps your cachet in your street cred. It keeps it up. But really getting a movie made is the thing. So right now, to take that time off, to focus on those other things, I sort of feel like that'll be the thing to do. I'm going to get put out to pasture pretty soon. Hollywood is a young man's game. It's amazing that I'm still in it. Typically, writers' careers start to peter out at about 50. I am. I see it's recording, so shut off the recording for 1 second. I will say I am 61, and I feel like I'm 45 or 35. I'm running and swimming and biking, and thank God, for now. But so I want to do those things, but I want to keep doing the Hollywood thing as long as God gives me access. I sort of feel like that's his.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, you talked about the things the Jewish isms that didn't make it into your films. Can you share with us any of the Jewish isms or the little hints or winks or nods to your fellow tribe members? Can you share with us any of those that did make it in?
Sure. Well, I mean, some of this stuff is available online, I think, and talks both at the Jewish Learning. I think Torah Cafe, there's a lecture called Screenplay by Moshe and Me, where I kind of go over all this. So that's at torahcafe.org or .com, I think. Mm-hmm. And you can just Google me and Screenplay by Moses and Me, Moshe and Me. I go over that. But just in a quick nutshell, in Shrek 2, there's a whole beautiful thing about what love is, the definition of love. And love means what's important to you is important to me. And I kind of break that down. I got that Torah thought from Rabbi Goldberg here in LA, who runs Or Eliyahu Academy, but he got it from his Rebbe, Rabbi Noah Orlowick, who is an amazing educator in Jerusalem. And I do a whole lecture on that, which I think I did it when I was with you guys. We talked about the whole thing about about that. And that's in Shrek 2. There's just a throwaway joke in Smurfs. The moon is blue. And I think Grumpy Smurf says, there are 613 shades of blue. Which one are you waiting for? So the 613, the kids sort of liked. Other themes about deciding who you are based on the story of the angels that come on Shabbos, the two angels, the good angel and the bad angel, that famous story that we hear. That idea that we can change our destiny is the entire theme of Smurfs 1. The clumsy Smurf is able to overcome being clumsy under the stars, so to speak. And that was based on Avraham getting the promise from God that he will be set above the stars, which was another way to read that is our destiny. And every morning, that gets back to the Moda Ani, we sort of feel like, when we get into a rut, man, I'm a loser. I'm not a guy that can do this. I'm not the person. I'm not a woman who can do that. I'm not. And we get set and we start to believe the self-talk. Yeah. And God is coming to tell Abraham, you're above the stars, because there's two angels coming, may be like this next week, right? That's what they say. Right. And the question the rabbis raise is, well, if the angel said it may be like this next week, how does it ever change? Because that, right? So, and the answer is that God lets us bust out of our destiny. And that was a really important Jewish idea, because before that, and still in many societies, you go to India, and even in England until recently, the whole caste system, that if you're noble and you're a lord, or you're nobility, you're nobility. It doesn't matter whether you deserve it or not. And that was in India still. It's going on to this day. And that was the way the world was. And Judaism comes to tell the world, no, we're all noble. And we have to claim our nobility because we're all children of the king. And anyway, that's there. The Hanukkah special on Rugrats, the entire episode, the whole show is the telling of the story of Hanukkah. So, yeah.
David, I'm going to ask a personal question. You described some of the letdowns and disappointments of working so hard on something, really pulling it all together. It sounded like you had all of the components and the formula really for success, the top names in the industry, etc. And then it just slips by, it just falls apart due to some quirk of, circumstance / circumstances. So my question to you is, in real time, how do you process those disappointments, those letdowns? You're a person who just talked right here, right now, about the power of applicable faith, applicable bitachon. How do you do it in real time? How do you talk to yourself? What are your meditations then to help you get over and get through those situations of immense letdown and disappointment?
There's a lot of self-talk in all of these situations. And one of my favorites is, and this was, again, I have a mentor that's just a really sensitive soul. And I love, there's a couple of rabbis who got involved also locally in this 12-step stuff. So there's a lot of fun little tricks of the trade. One of my favorites is to go to that mirror, literally go in the mirror. I recommend this. I know it sounds hokey and it's going to seem silly, but it works. I go to the mirror and I look in the mirror. And I got to tell you, as I made some amazing strides and changes, even though my marriage in the end didn't last. 25 years isn't a bad run in LA standards. That's like the same as 50 years. But it got kind of bumpy there at the end. And I was doing a lot of recovery and therapy work and really making some real changes. And from my side of the story, my wife was having a harder time with that. She was also having a hard time with my changes because we had a habit that we were in the dance we did. And so sometimes she would say stuff that was really not helpful and was maybe a little mean or lash out at me. And I was trying to keep it together and stay calm and positive. And my Rebbe said, you can't take that personally, right? So he said, Q-tip. And I'll say to myself, Q-tip, quit taking it personally. When someone else is angry, and there's a bunch of these sayings, I just love them. Also, if it's hysterical, it's historical, which means the thing you're hearing right now isn't about what's happening right now. So I could look at her and say to myself, that's not my beautiful wife talking right now. That's the part of her that got hurt as a child. And so I would go into the room, but I still needed someone to love me. I still didn't want someone yelling at me and saying mean things, nor did she. I would go into the bathroom, look in the mirror. I'd say, excuse me a moment. I'd look in the mirror and I'd say, hi, David. I see you. I hear you. I love you. So does he. You're good. And when you don't need the people around you to give you your self-worth, you can let them off the hook. One of the reasons we have such, and by the way, I really feel like had I gotten into this situation sooner and had my wife been able to join me, I think we would have made it. I think we could have pulled it together. There were a couple of other issues that made it hard, but it was a little too late. It was 25 years, and but for anybody out there that's having this, one of the hardest things in a relationship is that we're expecting our spouse to make us feel good about ourselves. And if we can get to where we feel good about ourselves, then it's so much, and then not take these things personally. We can go into any kind of difficult situation, and things have gotten kind of difficult in those last couple of years, and I was actually happy. I could have stayed, I think. I really could have done it. Because I was taking care of myself, and I was able to be more loving, and my resentments were fading away because I wasn't putting it on her. And that's the same thing. When we put other people, places, and things in charge of our happiness, then we're in a lot of trouble. So I do the same thing with the studio chief. When the studio chief says, we're not doing this. And there's been some bogus reasons. There have been unfair reasons. They have had us working for months for free and then revealed that they didn't have the rights to the project. That's illegal, actually. We've had all kinds of requests. You know, one of the reasons I got involved in the Writers Guild, I was the vice president of the Writers Guild during the strike. I helped organize the strike in 2007 when we shut, to get, the studios can be so, these corporations, they're huge corporations, multinational corporations, and these CEOs, it's sort of funny, it's been famously said that there is the personality traits between a successful CEO and it's either a sociopath or a psychopath, I don't remember which. They're very similar personalities. And it's true. They can fire people and they can do cruel things. It's so hard for me to fire anybody. I can't, you know, a gardener or a, you know, somebody, a, you know, housekeeper. I can't. You got to take care of these people. Writers are bleeding heart people, you know. But because of these little mantras, God has my back. God
it's really powerful.
My back. And this time of year, it's so beautiful because we have so many extra readings, right? This morning's psalm, the psalm of the day, when anxious thoughts multiply within me. And I wrote a song about this. When my anxious thoughts multiply within my soul, right? God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, won't you, remove this shield from my heart that doesn't let you in. I wish that the acoustics were good on here. I would play that song for you. The acoustics on Zoom are terrible. I haven't figured out how to do that yet. But I will sing those songs. God has my back, you know. And to the Psalms, the things that we're doing during Zaman Simchatenu, there's these additional. So this we do every week. But the Shir Hayom of today, the Psalm of today, when my anxious thoughts multiply within me, your comforts soothe my soul. So God is doing that this time of year. The David that we say, right? The Lord is the light of my life and the defense of my soul. Whom shall I fear? Whom shall I dread? The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the defense of my life. Whom shall I dread? I go into a studio chief now, and it's like, who is he? He's gonna become dust, ashes and ashes, dust to dust, just like the rest of us. Right now, he has some power over hiring or firing me. Does he have actual power over my fate, over my future? No, there's one person who has power over my fate. There's two. There's God himself, and he's giving me a little tiny bit of control over my attitude. And so that's how I can go into these meetings and have projects just crash and burn. I mean, I could spend hours and hours and hours telling you all the horror stories. And every writer can. Every writer, they have incredible, crazy horror stories of the mistreatments and the indignities.
It's very interesting because, David, what you're shining a light on is something that not many of us are familiar with, which is that to be a writer, you need to be an incredibly resilient person with great perseverance and faith, really. Because you every time you have a letdown, you get back up and you keep at it and you forge forward, which I think is powerful. David, we have a few minutes left. I want to jump into a few questions. There's a lovely, wonderful man named Ofer. And he says he's a huge fan of the 40s film Harvey. And apparently you are working on a remake of Harvey. And he wants to know if your writing has been influenced at all by Jewish ideas of faith, our perceptions of reality, because he says it's one of his favorite films and very powerful in terms of faith, perception, reality, knowing what is and isn't real.
Speaking of letdowns, so I spent 2 years on Harvey, and we wrote the most beautiful script. And yes, it was peppered with it. The whole thing is about faith. It's such a lovely, and about being a kind person, about kindness and hesed. And it's got this great line that everything built to, which was, in my life, you know, my mother used to tell me, my mother used to say, Elwood, and she always called me Elwood. Elwood, in this life, you can either be oh so kind or oh so smart. And I've tried smart. I recommend kind. And I just love it. But guess what? COVID hit, and Netflix has changed their production model. And they're looking to do big action family comedy films, big special effects driven movies. Harvey is a little quiet, sleepy film. And the production has gotten backed up because there's so little production going on that it just fell off the radar. And so it's now in what they call turnaround, which means the producers can take it to some other studio and try and get it set up. But for the moment, Harvey is dead at Netflix, and all that work.
Wow. What percentage of films would you say, in your experience or out there, experiences that fate?
It used to be basically the development ratio was 1 in 10, that 1 in 10 projects would get made.
Huh.
And I think it's probably less than that now.
So you have no recourse? There's no way for you to take something you're really passionate about and bring it to the public in any which way?
I don't own Harvey. So Harvey is owned by the estate of Mary Chase, and it was licensed. The play was licensed to the producer, so the producers have the rights, and they buy from me. When I wrote that script, I signed away my rights to the script. They have to pay me if they get it made. They have to pay me royalties and residuals, and I'm protected in some ways, but I'm not technically. I'm not even the author. It literally says in the contract that the author for all time, throughout all of history, in any media, in any place in the universe, known or unknown. That's how specific the language is.
Wow.
Literally, because they don't know. Maybe they're going to start showing the movies in the second dimension of the fourth quadrant of interstellar Gothenhafen, you know. So they own it. They wrote it. Legally, they're the author of the movie.
Wow. That must be crushing, because, you know, for someone who's creative, and you're brilliant. It must be hard to part with your creativity and to see it just shrivel on a shelf somewhere.
So listen, you can make it hard, and it was when I first got started, and I always try and teach this to young writers. I am so privileged to be in this position. And I have two things I want to say really fast that I don't forget. One is, I said that about they turn into ashes, they turn into dust. I used to think that ashes to ashes, dust to dust. Naked I came into the world, and naked I go out, from Eob. I used to think that was like a sober, the Jews are so depressing. You can't take it with you. It was just kind of, no. You came in with everything you need, and you're going to go out with everything you need. You are complete. You have everything you need. You need God. And you need you. And if you can hang on to that, you'll have so much more, because you'll become a wonderful person. I have a lot of friendships, and I got to say, now that I'm single, I'm not having a hard time meeting people that are interesting and lovely. Much easier than when I was younger, because I'm not intense and freaked out and frightened and worried about my career all the time. I feel bad for my wife. She dealt with a guy that was a nervous wreck for the first 15 years of our marriage. I can't. Disney's calling. Who wants to live with that? But try not to feel that way when you don't have the tools, and Disney's calling. And so many people think that everything else is so important because they don't know they're enough. And the gift of my Yiddishkeit and my Rebbe and these 12 steps and the learning and my mentors and rabbis like you, when I come to visit you in Belgravia, I gotta tell you, the guys at Chabad inspire me more than anybody. I love touring. I missed that with the COVID. I got to spend time with these families. I would, before the COVID, I was, many times a year, I'm out staying, having Shabbat with families like the Kalmansons. And I was just that little house that you were working on. I hope it's in better shape than it was then. I have no idea if you had a chance to fix it up. But you guys schlepping the chairs and living in those houses, but the joy, right? Because you know what's important and you know who's in charge. And hanging out with you has helped. So you have to surround ourselves with those people. So that naked idea is one that gives me the ability. And then the second one is Moses. I just wrote about this, and the Writers Guild had me write about my job as the vice president. I'm still on the board of trustees for the health and pension plan. We manage about $3 billion in retirement funds for our writers. And I'm really honored to be on that board of directors. So, I have a business degree, and so it's a good fit. And I was the vice president for several years, and I was on the board there. They had me write, and I wrote this whole thing about my involvement, how proud I am of the work I did at the Writers Guild to help get the internet covered in that strike. But my real goal was to get animation covered, because the animation that I've done is not covered by the Writers Guild, and I do not get residuals or royalties on the animation, which is why I'm in this apartment instead of owning the whole building. But thank God I did just buy a beautiful little duplex that I'm remodeling, and I'm going to live upstairs and rent out the downstairs. In the end of my thing, what I wrote was, I'm so grateful for that journey, because being involved in the Writers Guild, I made friends, I learned things, we changed the world for middle-class families. It was just a spectacular experience. But guess what? I didn't accomplish what I set out to accomplish, which was to get animation covered. It didn't happen. I was given the animation award for my work with the Writers Guild. I'm really proud of. I've got Emmy nominations. I got this, which is the Writers Guild animation. This was for my work with the animation and for my writing and animation. And when I gave the speech, I said, we didn't accomplish it. We didn't get it covered. And guess what? Who is my biggest mentor? My biggest mentor is Moshe Rabbeinu. And what was his job? To take us in Israel. Right. That was his job. Right. And he didn't get to go. He didn't get to go. And that's our lives. It is not the outcome. We have no control over the outcome.
Right.
It's the process. It's the
Pirkei Avot teaches so beautifully that it's not on you to complete the job, but you're not able to desist from participating either. And I think that's the balance of putting your best foot forward, as they say here in the UK, and letting go of the outcome.
Letting go of the outcome allows you to be happy, because I now can rejoice. Okay, Harvey didn't get made. Yeah, look, I'm not going to lie. It's disappointing. It was such a great story. But I used to allow myself weeks to mourn. Wow. I literally was, and now it's like, I'll feel bad. I laid on the couch for a couple hours. I called a friend and I said, I'm so bummed. And I gave it, and that's another trick to being happy, by the way. Give yourself a break. Now I don't fight it anymore. I'm a little older. So at night when I start to get tired and worn out, a little bit down, I'll just lay on the couch, go to sleep. It's okay. Tomorrow's another day. I used to, I got to push through. How long is this feeling going to last? Oh no, I'm sad. Oh no. I'm sad. Be sad. And then I get up in the morning and I start looking for the next job. And I say, this is my job, and what a blessing. It's all attitude. And you're talking to someone who was, needed therapy as a younger person in college. And like I said, there's suicide very close to my family. And that is a thing that used to chase me as a fear, because I saw it. And that's been, thank God, 10 years since I've ever there's no way. But I never believed I could be free of anxiety. I never believed I could be free of panic. Every now and then it creeps back. I'm not Superman, but I used to live there. And so I feel like I'm qualified to come and tell you all, you don't have to live there.
David, two things. I mean, first of all, a lot of what you were talking about in terms of perspective resonates. As you know, I worked on a book called Positivity Bias, which essentially encapsulates the Rebbe's views on positivity and teaches that it's programmatic. It's a choice rather than circumstance. It's perspective rather than personality. And the story you shared about the Rebbe's favorite prayer was one I loved including, because it just takes you by surprise. You would think something, from, some obscure, radical, esoteric, cosmic text. And it's really the 12-word, not 12-step, it's like the 12-word program rather than the 12-step program, David, right? The Modani is 12-word.
Yeah, I love that. I think you shared that with me. I loved hearing that.
So, and what we were talking about really does address, I think, some of the essential struggles and challenges of young people today, which is panic and is anxiety and so forth, especially during COVID. So I just want to circle back to my earlier first question, which is maybe within the Hollywood context, to find a way to encapsulate what you just shared as tools for anxiety and panic and so forth could really, I think, transform many, many, many lives, as I believe everyone on this call can attest to, in its power and potency to really vividly bring to life how these teachings can transform. David, one final question. Who along your journey impacted you personally? It sounds like one of your great gifts is friends, is mentors. And I'm so happy to hear that and moved to hear that. And sometimes I think all of us wish we had that mentor, that, person who can lift us out of the challenges and so on. But I just wanted to hear maybe a little more specifically. You mentioned Robin Williams and some other wonderful human beings. What are some of the things you learned from the people in your journey that you're comfortable or happy sharing? Perhaps some of the people you worked with on set or in that context that you took with you?
It's so funny, the question, because I wanted to close with a little story. And there are so many people that I would give a chorus of tov to, gratitude and thanks to. I mean, the people that come to mind are, I'll share this one because I just pulled up the picture. So when I was in camp I went to one Jewish camp once as a kid for 2 weeks in Malibu. It burned down in our fires, tragically, Hess Kramer and Gideon Hilltop. There was a media professor there, he was a young kid with long hair down to his butt who lived in his van, in his lorry, his small lorry, I think you call it over there. And his name was Steve Sauer. And he taught us how to put music and pictures together for our big project at the end of the camp. And I fell in love with multimedia in that moment. And he was just this charismatic, lovely fellow. And I wanted to be his assistant. And that really got me going with the idea of multimedia and telling stories. And I went back and started making slideshows. In high school, I made them instead of doing written reports, and the teachers liked them. And I was in the church, that's what I was doing. Anyway, he had this big impact on me in that regard. When we were working on Shrek 2, we didn't have a chance to work with the actors very much. And it was really frustrating to me because Mike Myers is there, and we met him here and there. We were all at the party. We went to Cannes for the premiere in France, and everybody was at the cast party. But we didn't get to spend time with them. They were kind of roped off, and you'd say hi, and I was the writer. Anyway, Julie Andrews was just one of my favorites. My mom, may her memory be a blessing, was just in love with Julie Andrews and used to tap dance in the elevator. And I do that to this day. I tap dance in the elevator because Julie tap danced in the elevator in a movie called Thoroughly Modern Millie with Mary Tyler Moore. And so I loved Julie Andrews. I'm at the screening party for the release of the Shrek 2 DVD at Wolfgang Puck's in Beverly Hills. I can't eat anything, but it's kind of exciting to be there. And there's Julie behind the rope thing. And I really didn't get a chance to talk to her in France. And I was just upset about that. So I went over to the bouncer. She was sitting with Jeffrey Katzenberg and Mike Myers and Steven Spielberg and all the big shots. The rest of his crew, we kind of mill around. We're welcome, but we're not that welcome. And so the bouncer, I said, I want to say hi to Julie. I was the writer. And so he says, okay, just a minute. He goes over and he talks to me. And this guy comes over in a suit. He looked like a CIA agent. And he goes, I should try and find that picture too. But he says, hi, so how, and he starts interviewing me like Mossad does. What was the reason for your stay? Again, and they ask you the same question 6 times because he wants to make sure I'm not going to tackle Julie Andrews or try and make out with her or something, right? So he said, let me give you my card. I think he's going to send me away. Like, here's my card. We'll get back to you. I'm like, what's happening? So I look at his card and it says Steve Sauer. And I say, I didn't dawn on me to go this far back, but I said, oh, you related to Rabbi Sauer? Because he's like the big posek here in Los Angeles. And he says, no, I'm not, but my father was the cantor at Wilshire Boulevard Camp. And I said, Wilshire Boulevard, Camp Hess Kramer? He said, yeah. Wilshire, I said, I went to those camps. I went to Wilshire Boulevard Temple camps. It's Camp Hess Kramer. He went, I was a counselor at Hess Kramer. And I went, wait a minute. You're not Steve Sauer who used to have hair down to the back of your butt, down to your bum. And he said, yes, how do you know me? I said, I'm David Weiss. I was one of the 9th grade campers we did the multimedia, and I fell in love with this medium and went on to write Shrek 2 because of you. And he couldn't believe it. And he went over, he felt like he had to tell Julie Andrews. And so, which he did. And he went and got Julie and brought her over. And I have this wonderful picture of me and Julie Andrews now, thanks to him. And it was so strange that after all those years that it came back to 2 Jews from Jewish camp is what got me back into, this opportunity to be with somebody that had meant so much to me.
David,
yes.
Back to you, my heartfelt appreciation and gratitude for what can only be described as an incredible whirlwind journey of inspiration and enlightenment and elevation and illumination, and most importantly, hopefully for many of us, transformation. That was really powerful. And I loved how you brought it home and you brought it into concrete practices, which is sometimes what these types of talks lack. And what you did was you literally visually laid it out for us into a fitness routine that can really, please God, bring God into our lives and help us learn how to master our state of mind, as you put it, especially during these trying and turbulent and transitional and transient periods where we are taking life day by day. And it has been such a benefit to hear from you about how one can, during and despite such anxiety-inducing times, nevertheless maintain a state of equilibrium and empathy, humor and humanity, and a bit of and faith and fortitude, and most importantly, simcha, zeman simchatenu. So let me thank you, David, so much, and thank all of you for joining tonight. It was a real joy to connect and to celebrate and to journey together, and take this moment to bless each and every one of you here tonight with only continued excellent health, with prosperity, serenity, peace of mind, love and light, and Bezrat Hashem, only revealed good for you and yours. God bless you. Chag Sameach.
Thank you.